Hello. So this is an explanation of what you're about to see, and for better or for worse, right? Um, Miguel, who apprentices with me, came up to me and he's like, "Hey, Danny, can you show me how to throw like a bunch like lids in general, okay? And can we sit down and just kind of throw together?" And I thought, well, I'm like, yeah, sure. And then so I'm thinking to myself, hey, this would be a really cool thing to kind of to do for Patreon, and just kind of show that how you kind of progress from one to the next and this and that. And so so in this video, there's a little bit, once in a while, there's some conversation back and forth with me and Miguel, but okay, I edited it down to like cutting out, and it was 5 hours long. And so it's like, what was I thinking? So what I've done is I have I've drawn it down to, well, I've got 3 finished pieces here because it's been so long with me trying to figure out what to do. The work has actually come out of the kiln. So I'm going to show, this is the kind of the focus. There's a few other lids that are in there and some other things. The honey pot, I had it up here to show as well. It had sold, but there's already a honey pot video. So you can refer back to that. Diana didn't know what I was doing, and I had these all sitting up here and they look gorgeous, and so she put them out in the gallery. So I'm going to turn the camera around so that you can see each of the pieces, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Not a whole lot, just because a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So here we go. Okay, so this is the first piece that I did, and it's the most basic, and so pretty simple concept, you know, with the lid and everything, and this is how it kind of turns out, you know, being glazed and waxed and all the things that make it go in. The big thing about this that I really I repeat a lot, right? And you guys are probably rolling your eyes tired of hearing it, is this curve here that allows me to wax that closely. And so even when I've got the piece on, the lid, you just can't hardly tell where the wax ends. And not like you even look at a piece from this angle, but getting things dialed in that tight really does, it just sharpens how things look and are perceived and things like that. And so because this is really nice and clean and small, it doesn't really present itself as raw clay. It could almost literally be just another aesthetic part of it. And when you have an attractive clay body, which this is not, this is B-Mix, so it fires off this kind of pastel, anemic yellow. If you got a dark, pretty clay body, that's really nice also. Okay, so we got the little, I don't know, maybe cookie jar. And then these are all 3 pounds, remember? And so this is the one where, this is really a cool way to make a lid here, where it, the form continues over in the lid portion. So here's what this looks like, all waxed up, and my shelves were a little bit on the grungy side, and so they picked up a little bit, but so that's unfortunate there. But the reason why this is not glazed here is because I did not fire it in here, because I want to bring the tolerances down really close. See, I mean, I'm glazing right to the edges, and there's not a millimeter of wiggle here, and so really tight tolerances. So I like being able to fire, and this lid is so solid in not only the way it's made, but with these corners and things like that, when it shrinks very symmetrically, and they just go together nicely. So I always fire these lids, at least at this scale, separately. And then that way my glaze can come right to my edge, and it just creates that really nice continuation of form. And you know, you don't have to do this either. It's kind of fun actually, just to kind of almost hide the lid, where you don't raise up here, and you just come right over flush, and you've just got this really round, perfect form. And another way you can do these knobs is to run a slab from here to here that actually can, and then cut out 2 little spots for your finger and your thumb. And so you just basically have an orb with the inset lid there. So, and then here is a very distant relative of that last piece, where, because it's inset, but, and then this is thrown in one piece. And then when I trim it, there's a little bit of a concave, you'll see that in the video, that I trim out that. And then I also actually trim down a tiny bit right here so that I can have this as my foot, okay? And just in case, you know, I'm getting, because I get really close, I try to get really close so that I don't have any issues. And this, by the way, fired separately as well. So it was sitting there, you know, on a kiln shelf. And then that allows me to actually, when I waxed low enough, and I've got it, there's an angle actually cut in there when I did my trimming. I made sure that there was a really acute edge that I could wax to, and it's actually below the lid so that you don't even see any clay body at all. And so once again, this lid is fired separately. Big no-nos in the world of ceramics, but I tend to do that, I guess. The glaze on this piece, I love this. This is my grandma's blue glaze, and it's been smoking lately. It's just, the pots are coming out. Just, your eyes almost cross. They look like they're vibrating. I mean, even that, this was just a little bit of a tiny little trimmed edge in there, and the way it caught the glaze, and then also the spray, created that awesome little pattern that you can't even feel. It's completely flush and filled in. But the visual record of it is alive and well. So those are the three pieces as they have turned out. Super pleased with them. Mostly the glaze is just looking so good on these. Whoops, sorry, bumped my camera. And that's all I'm going to say, because if I just keep talking, this just gets longer. And the video it's about 2 hours, something like that. And so there's going to be a few references in there that are something coming up in the future or this or that, but just, there's a lot of good information in there. And I like the fact that, I mean, different ways I've trimmed stuff, different ways I've stuck things down to bats, things I didn't cut off of bats because I wanted them to stay really solid. So there's a lot of stuff in there that I really think is of value about just how to think about how to do things. And so, here we got the disembodied voice again. But if I turn my camera around, it's going to do something funny again. So I'm going to let you go and, I don't know, get some popcorn and a soda and sit back for a while. And let me know what you think. Talk to you later. Okay, so this is set up for 10 centimeters. And so one of the best things I think you can do before you get going is to set your calipers. And the reason I like to do that is that I can actually put my calipers there relative to where my opening is going to be, and it can kind of keep me on track as to where I'm headed. It's good to know where you're headed before you leave. Like, you know, who's that, Little Red Riding Hood going off through the forest? Or is that Goldilocks? Maybe they both got lost. Anyway, neither of them knew where they were headed. Well, one of them knew they were headed to Grandma's house, I guess. Oh, that's it. Okay, so we're talking about Goldilocks. Little Red Riding Hood got hijacked by the wolf. That's it. Getting my nurse. It's been a while since I've had to do nursery rhymes with little kids, and for some reason I can't get my 10 centimeters down. It's taken me forever. Anyway, this first piece, the first three pieces I'm going to throw are from 3 pounds of clay, and they are 10 centimeter lids, openings, and they're all, I will be doing an interior measurement of all of the openings. So this is, I'm actually switching over, this is B-Mix cone, I guess they call it cone 5. I actually fire to a hot 6. I'll bend 7 a little bit. and it does seems to do fine. But I like my glazes better at that temperature. That's the only reason. Okay, they all play nicest at that temperature, and so that's where I'm at. And I do so much with so many different glazes. I don't feel like bringing them all down 1.5 cones. So we fire to a hot 7, and I'm having to think and speak. Hold on a second, let me think for a minute. Throwing a 3-pound piece. I'm sitting here thinking, Miguel, I should have had you weigh out smaller balls early or for this one.
Yeah.
Well, just yeah, but that's okay. We're good. Miguel weighed out all the clay and prepped everything, so that's why I was saying that. So yeah, this is going to be a bit of a rounded form. Now that's a little bit wide right now for my 10 centimeters, I'm guessing, but I'm going to take a look and just kind of get myself in there. So I'm about 103 millimeters, okay? So we're right there in the ballpark, and I like staying in the ballpark, okay? I don't want to have to collar this thing, weigh in, 10 or 20% of whatever my number is. I want to keep it pretty close. Actually, I think in the video I did with this lid, I did probably like about probably a 1.5 or 2 pound piece, and it was more of a square-sided deal than what this is going to be. This one's very roundish. Okay, so we're getting dialed in here now. I've been rambling instead of talking about what I'm doing, which I think is kind of self-evident, because but now I want to talk about this lip, okay? So one of the things I did was I had it in too far, and so it was like maybe 3 millimeters inside of 10 centimeters, okay? Maybe 4 or something like that. And what I like is being able to pull it back and compress that lip, okay? And it gives me a little bit sturdier lip and rounds it nicely. And then what I want is this right here. See how that comes up? And it presents this, and I'm going to pull you in close so you can see it more closely. And that's still, I'm looking in the lens, or not the lens. The lens is looking at the pot. I'm looking in the screen. There's a good word for it. And I'm looking to see what you can see. Okay, so if you notice, I'm going to get you down level. All right. Hold on, I got to get it where the camera will stay there on its own. Can you tell? And I'm going to get my needle point out. That here's the top right there. And that's where the lid is going to set. But here is where this lip comes down to and presents a corner, okay? That corner is what really, to me, a lot of people don't do that they should. Because what it does two things. It allows me to lay my brush down when I'm waxing and get that really super clean line. And then, of course, my glaze comes up and has a super clean line as well that's really close to the lid. If I have this come up and this doesn't have this separation here, I have to wax probably down to here in order to feel comfortable. And also because this curves up, that also helps me wax closer to my rim and not have to worry about it sticking to the gallery. So to me, this is the beginning of lids, is what are you making for your lid to go on? And, you know, are you setting that up in such a way that you're going to be successful through all the other steps? Okay, so I'm going to back you off again. All right, so there's the first piece. Okay, I just threw my list away. Number 2 is the inset flush lid. Okay. Okay, so this is another 3-pound piece. Now, this is going to be an inset lid. The gallery then, so the gallery will be in the piece. The next 2 pieces are going to be there. They're going to be very similar, extremely similar, but the lids that go in them are going to be very different. Yeah, I'll throw a form somewhat similar to what I just did, especially because this one similar to what I just did, and show you how I set them up differently. Now, I'm already setting up my lip, okay? And when I say that is, I didn't pull through this as much as I could have, okay? I'm saving my powder is what I like to say. You know, for the important shot. You can't just go out there. You got to save your powder. So I'm setting myself up now. So right now I got my calipers sitting over my opening, and that's what I want, because this is the gallery is here, which means the true opening for the pot has to be less than 10 centimeters. What I'm going to be doing is making a pot that has a smaller than 10 centimeter opening with a notch in it that is 10 centimeters for my lid. So when I talk about how you don't just sit down and make a bunch of different things one right after the other, this has got me a little worried. And so I am really working on reminding myself not to run out of clay on that lip. I'm already getting thinner. In the direction I was headed. Okay. So a lot of people that are on here, some people have thrown a lot with ribs and some people haven't. And it does take some getting used to, and a lot of times I'm throwing with ribs inside and out. But on these smaller forms, I don't quite so much. And that's good and bad. It gives me a little bit better touch on the inside, but it keeps that inside wetter. That's what I like about especially this metal rib on the outside, where I scrape off all that really wet clay. Okay, so now we're going to see how close I am still. So we're still inside of 10 centimeters. I'd put us at, my opening's probably 95 millimeters. Oh, and I was going to mention earlier, the reason why I like this metric is because it's based in 10, and it's very easy to figure your shrinkage with if you're having to do a commission or something, or you want to make something a certain size, or it's just so much easier to figure stuff when it's already based in 10. So I'm a little thicker than I would like to be right now, ironically, which is how you end up usually when you haven't been throwing the form one after the other and you can't get dialed in. and you don't want to be under, you usually go over. I'm not way over, but I am going to, I might throw a little and cut some off, just so I'm not too crazy big. Now, I'm having to think here. I'm setting this up. I'm doing this a flush top, and that is a very specific thing that I'm doing. So it's a change in form. Okay, you see this. A lot of people make, I mean, including myself, make vases that kind of have this sort of ring rim at the top. So see what I got going over here, Miguel?
Yeah. You just push from the inside?
I hold from the inside. I kind of, it's a little of both. Okay, I'm pushing down a little right here.
It's one of these?
It's a little bit of, it's a kind of a Newton. Yep, it goes in kind of both directions at the same time. And it won't be quite, I like this undercut right here. So we're just talking aesthetics right now. I mean, you don't have to nail this down, but I like that undercut right there. And oftentimes if you don't have enough clay up here, what happens is you'll do this and you'll do that undercut and you'll succeed in everything and it'll crack later. Sometimes it'll crack even after it's fired.
Too thin, huh?
You can get really super thin right here and really get it fatigued and have it fail on you.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we're way inside of 10 centimeters. We got all the power we need. We're like the Minutemen from, actually no, the Minutemen didn't have powder. They were out of ammunition. I keep coming up with all these allegorical examples that are wrong. So, dang it. Sometimes I can really be on, but not tonight. Okay, so now I'm doing the same thing in reverse on the other side to put my gallery in. So, okay, so here's my wooden knife, and I've got a square tip on it, slightly curved. Okay, when I say this isn't even curved, what this is a blunted corner. Okay, let me get it where you can really see it. So you never want to have a perfect corner because it's a setup. It's hard to get glaze cleaned out of it, and it's a setup for a crack. So you sand that off perfectly, 90-degree angle, and then you take some fine sandpaper and just wear that just a hair. Now, so what I do is I take my 10 centimeter measurement, I eyeball where I think it goes, and I hope that I put it in the right spot. And so I'm holding on the inside, and it is going to get pushed down a little bit. And usually my measurement is inside of what I want. And oh man, we were way inside. I was inside by probably 3 centimeters or millimeters. That doesn't 3 millimeters doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. When let me get rid of some of that. Now we're just right there. So I've pushed down on it a little bit, so when I raise up, it tends to open a hair also. And now we get into a bit of a dilemma. Where do I measure? Do I measure at the top of my opening, or do I measure at the bottom of my opening? Because if you look at my knife, see how this is straight up and down, okay? You want your knife back at about maybe 5 to 6 degrees, okay? Maybe even more than that. I don't know. Somebody measure that and let me know what it is. But it's back a little ways so that you don't have it's not perfectly straight up and down to try to get this thing to go into. So like I said before, I had a little too much clay at the top, so I'm going to cut some off. And there's my cutoff. And I'm going to spend a little time making that right. You got to be careful. This little flange in here is very susceptible to move up and down, and you don't want to torque it a lot because doing that weakens it, and it can break off too. So you got to have enough clay. These are not square joints on the back side in here. These are rounded, okay? And so they don't, You don't want, that's really one of the reasons why this top portion, you save so much clay. You don't want to have this thing, I should say, the perfect wall thickness for a finished piece, and then start moving it around, because you gotta have like this joint right in here doesn't, on the inside, it doesn't go over straight up and straight over. It curves past and it curves past that, and so you got a little little bit of clay saved up in all the corners. Otherwise, they're very susceptible for cracking. All right, I am at a tight 10 centimeters. I am going to just touch my edge just a little bit.
How far down did you go, Danny?
I am down, I would say, well, since we're talking in centimeters, I would say I am down 5 millimeters.
About like 5.
Yeah, like, you know, we're talking strong quarter, 3/8 of an inch, about-ish.
Yeah.
Okay, right in that range. All right, so one more 3-pounder. Now I'm going to make it the same. Okay, so I was thinking I was going to make a tall, narrow cylinder form, but I'm going to try to make them the same just to kind of, you know, see how things change. So this one, I got to save a lot of clay for the top. Did you hear that, Miguel?
Define a lot.
Right. Look.
Okay.
Okay. So pretty good coil. This will be a nice segue for our honey pot that we're going to make. And now I got to really think hard here for a second. Okay. So on this one, there's a lot you have to do to the top. So I'm going to get my body just a little bit closer. Maybe a lot closer. And now I'm gonna, before I finish working on the body, is I'm gonna get this a little. I'm gonna get my setup going. So I'm gonna gather this in just a hair because I'm a little bit wide. I was still inside of 10 centimeters, but I wanna make sure I got enough here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put a bevel on this. You're gonna need more clay than that. Push that down.
I was just checking mine.
Okay, but when you do your lip, put your sponge over the top and smash that. You need, see what I got?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna hold myself here with the thumb, and I'm gonna put a diagonal on the inside of this rim. Okay, now I'm gonna move the camera so you can see better. So I'm gonna get you really close. Okay, so see that's my finger is laid right in there. That's the, here. That is the angle that I have on this thick piece of clay. Like right here at the bottom, we're 5/8 of an inch thick, well, I'm almost 3/4, and then tapering up to like about a half. And what that does is it gets me it gets me a head start on that gallery. Let me just keep you in a little bit closer for doing this top. Okay, so I want to take another measurement and make sure I'm in the ballpark, and I am. I'm actually a little bit narrow, which is good because that means going out with clay is easy, right? So I'm going to get that going. Now I feel like I'm pretty comfortable. I'm semi-comfortable. I'm not done with these in a while. Okay, so I'm semi-comfortable to leave that for now and get my body finished. And the reason why I went and did that is because I want to make sure that I got all the clay I need, and that when I'm, pushing that around and moving it around, I don't have a really thin wall out here that's going to start to give. And I want to bring that curve right up to it. I don't want to have it. I don't want a weak transition in between these two places. It's a pet peeve of mine where this just kind of turns into a different change in direction. I mean, you can do, subtlety is different than weak, okay? And we want to stay away from weak as much as possible. So I'm going to come up under that again. And what that does is it actually helps this get a little bit bigger shoulder and fill out a hair. And I can turn right there and see how that makes that shoulder come in there nicely now. And I'll be able to work on it a little bit once I get myself further down the road. So, and I've actually pushed that in unintentionally, but I'm in a pretty good spot still. I've gotten a little bit wide. So I'm going to collar it in just a hair. I'm going to put myself back at a diagonal. And now I'm going to start to set my gallery. I'm going to take one more measurement. And here we go. So we're pretty good. I barely have enough opening now. My opening is like 97 millimeters. So I'm going to where I think we're at 10. I actually want to be I want to be like 102 millimeters. The beginning of my opening, because it's going to be a slight bevel all the way down. Now you're not really able to see in there very well. There we go. That's a little bit better light. Okay, so you can see now what I got going here. I'm going to take another measurement. And I'm inside, or sorry, yeah, my measurement is inside. So we're at about 100 and somewhere between 102 and 103 millimeters. So it's not bad. I'm in the ballpark. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push in a little bit while I make a pull. Just a little bit more, one more time. And I got my fingers wrapped underneath the bottom. I got another finger in here making a pull. And I am hoping it doesn't fall. All at the same time. Let's see what we got. Oh, it got wider. Not by much, just a tiny bit. So I got this curved out, so I can actually color it in just a hair. And I want to go a little past. I want to make my gallery just a tiny bit bigger. And I succeeded in that. So now you cannot see in here at all. I'm going to move the camera. Okay, so you can see inside better. And I've got exactly 10 centimeters right down there at the bottom of that gallery.
That's where it's going to turn 90.
Or, yes. Yep.
Are your walls straight or are they flared out?
This is a flared wall. It's, okay, so right down in here where my pinky is, it's more straight. It's the angle I would normally have just at like at a regular gallery side, okay? Just like where it's like 5 or 6 degrees, whatever that is, that I would normally do with my knife. And then I've got the wall flares out just a little bit. And then it becomes aesthetic.
Past that point.
It could have gone straight if I wanted to.
Gotcha.
I just can't be inside of it or the lid won't go in.
Okay. That makes sense.
So you want a more acute, there you go, yep. Okay, so we got this all kind of set up and going. Good. All right, so we're going to move to a honey pot, and I throw my honey pots with 8 centimeter lids. So I'm going to start by adjusting my calipers to 8 centimeters, and it has an inset gallery in the body of the honey pot. So is it cliche to talk about Winnie the Pooh when you're making honey pots? That is the question. I guess I feel like I like honey pots that make me feel warm and cozy, and I think Winnie the Pooh would also. I think he would approve. I don't know for certain. So this is my 1.5 pound honey pot that we're making here.
What do you set your calipers to again?
8 centimeters.
8.
Yep.
Ocho.
Ocho. All right. Ocho nueve diez. I can do. I have to say that afterwards because it's like one number for me.
Yeah.
We learned 1 through 10 when I was a kid, and they didn't mean that much to me, and so it's all like it all kind of runs together.
It really does, honestly.
Like when Diana was doing, when she was a kindergarten teacher, preschool kindergarten teacher. You know, she does the alphabet song, right?
Yeah.
A B C D E F G H I J K. The kids thought elemento was a letter.
Elemento.
Right. So.
I can see it.
Because Diana goes elemento P.
Elemento.
Elemento.
How do you?
The coolest sounding letter in the alphabet.
It does sound.
So.
Use that in a word.
So I mean, because that's how kids learn. Is they learn the sounds first, and then they start associating them with things. But so, see, she had to start. Some kid called her out. I mean, it's like, you know, they're talking about letters, and he goes elemento, and she's like, what? And so he explains, you know, elemento P, and she goes, oh, so she has to start singing the alphabet song LMNOP, which just doesn't roll.
No.
It does not roll nice. So, yeah. If I was a letter, I would want to be called elemento.
Elemento. That'd be cool.
Okay, so I'm going to check my opening with my calipers, and we're in the ballpark, but we're standing out in the parking lot. So we need to kind of get a little bit closer. So once again, this is the gallery is here. Now on this, I don't know, cheating isn't a word that you should use. It's all technique, but this is it's a trick. Shouldn't even be a trick. It's a method. I just square this top, and then what I'll end up doing, I find this thickness right here is probably a strong 1/2 inch. This top, and then I can come here with my square, and then I can hit it right in the middle, and there's my gallery, and there's my lip. Okay, so I'm setting myself up, holding my clay as much as I need at the top by squaring that, and then I can go ahead and make my form. You what?
I think I grabbed the wrong size. Yeah, right.
Too big?
Yeah.
That looks about right.
Too much clay. What'd you say? A pound and a half?
Uh-huh, pound and a half.
Alright, then I got it right then.
Yeah. And, you know, so, I mean, Pooh would want a big honey pot. I mean,
That's true.
so if you made a 5-pound honey pot, he'd be like, yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Let's make sure I'm still in the ballpark. And we are. We are kind of, we're not quite, we can't see the field yet. We're getting ready to walk through the tunnel. I'm still a little wide, but we're not in the parking lot anymore. Okay, so when I was showing you that up there, and I had that, normally this would be pretty square, and because of of making this round, it actually does what I was doing before, and it takes that square and it kind of tips it in a little bit. When if I set up square,
Yeah.
and then I make this curve, perpendicular to that line, that curve is the top of this T, if you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see.
And so it actually starts to tip it in, and it makes it just perfect for taking my knife and making the gallery. And I'm a little bit narrow, which is always awesome, because then I can compress against that gallery wall that gets a little bit thin when I push it with the knife, when it's this small of an amount. And that compresses that nicely and keeps it from being something that chips easily. And just a tiny bit thin still. About a 1/2 millimeter, which is a lot on 8 millimeters. That is a little over 5%. So we are there, right there. Now, one of the things I want to talk about here too is with these other pieces, you got a lot of clay, and like the first piece that I did was it'll have the lid sitting on top, so it's setting up and it's done. But what I like is that this is nice and big and round and full. I haven't shorted myself on the thickness here and the weight, the visual weight that this will have. And when I throw when I put my top on, I trim it in such a way that I've got this curve and then another curve, and then I have the dome of the lid. And so it kind of sets all that up to look like it's not my first one.
It looked like my first one.
Have you never made a honey pot?
No way.
All right, man, that's cool. You can't make your second one until you've made your first one. Okay, so there's a 1.5 pounds. That's a good looking pot there. That's nice, and Pooh would be Pooh approved. Got to make the top to my cap jar, or sorry, the honey pot. So that is an 8 centimeter Audi. All right, there we go. Okay, I'm getting a little low here for the camera. Okay. That might be a little high. There we go. Okay, so this is a dome top with a thrown knob. So it gets made a lot like the 6 centimeter lid for the tiny pot. But I want to make sure I've got plenty of clay out here on my edge when you're doing your lid for your honey pot, Miguel.
Yep.
So it trims up nicely that way. So I'll usually fatten it like that.
A little extra thickness.
And get some thickness there. We can cut it off. We can trim it away. And I'm too wide. Okay, so I pulled out too much clay, so I'm just gonna take that off and we're gonna go again. That's going to be better. Okay, so what I do is I pull that up and then I fatten this right up and down this way, right here. With my finger backwards like that, doesn't matter how you do it. I just want plenty of clay there. And I'm just a little bit too big still.
Talking like 1/4 inch thickness?
1/4 inch minimum, yeah. And I don't mind these being a little on the thick side anyway, at the rim, because a lot of these I fire off the pot. It saves me a full inch in my shelves when I'm stacking pots. And they're so small, they fit in between the honey pots in the little tiny voids where nothing else in the world would fit, but they fit there. So all my lids in my honey pots go on the same shelf, but the shelf is an inch lower than what it would have been if I left the lid on. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze here at the bottom again, just like before. So I got plenty of room for a knob. And I'm going to make one more because that one is just still a little too big. So I got to tell myself to calm down here. You don't need that much clay. And this is all a product of throwing one pot after another that are different. When you're throwing the same pot, you can get dialed in and your hands just start pulling up the right amount of clay and everything goes nice and neatly. That's much better. I'll squeeze it up so I got plenty of room for a knob again. Okay, so I just finished a 10 centimeter lid and I'd forgotten to move the camera down. So we're making another one. Maybe I need a backup, I don't know. We'll see what Destiny has in the cards for me. So I'm using these plastic bats and they skid a lot. I really don't like plastic bats. Make it hard to center clay quickly. And they set other students up for failure because the clay skids. Okay, so I'm going to undercut with my thumb just a little bit, just to kind of alleviate some trimming in the future, and so that pushes some clay up. And then I pull this back, and you see me in my other lids a lot of times set up this flat top. I like having that right like that. And I'm gonna get my calipers and see if I'm in the ballpark. And that looks way thin, okay? But remember, that's not my opening. I'm have to make a gallery. So I'm basically right about in the right spot. So I'm gonna push down right like that to create that gallery. And I'm a little thick here, so I can just let my thumb come right into it. And let my pinky go on the inside, and that thins out this portion of it. And we'll see how we look. And dang, 2 in a row. So I'm going to this is a little on the thin side. I'm going to fatten it up a hair. Put my little swirly in there. Now here, what I like about this portion of this square part of the knife, there's the word. You can pull it, you can leave it there, or see I pulled it out a little bit and then I stopped. That gives me a really great place to wax too. And so my glaze comes around there nicely and it finishes nicely. Everything looks neat and tidy. And I really like what that does and works good. Okay, so there's that. There's the standard lid. I'm running out of room over here. All right, what lid are we making now? We are doing the inset flush. Okay, I'm gonna have to think harder on this one. Now, the inset flush lid on 10 centimeters is a little tricky to make actually, because there's a lot going on in a very short amount of space. Uh-oh.
Plastics in the area. Keep in mind things that need to be moving. This is a pound?
This is 1 pound. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to make sure, I think I bumped my calipers and it makes me paranoid when that happens. I'm still on. Okay, so there's 10 centimeters. So from this ball of clay, I probably have way too much clay, so that's okay. I told Miguel a pound because I haven't made one of these in a long time. And a lot of times I would throw these off the hump as well. So that kind of, it's looking to me like 3/4 of a pound might have been a better amount. And that's certainly doable off the hump as well also. And plus where you can pick these things up, it doesn't mess with the measured point.
Thickness of it?
Yeah. Well, because of the way that they're shaped. So I'm gonna, all right, I'm gonna make a little, we're gonna do this. We're gonna take off that much, Miguel. So I took off, I don't know, maybe an ounce. And I'll recenter that.
Looks about right.
And it probably was not quite enough, but I'm scared. Being a coward, I want to make sure I have enough clay. We'll make a very big knob. How's that? So, once again, here's my 10 centimeters. All right. And my knob, I have to make my knob first. All right. So I'm going to come way out here. And right now, you don't want to get all wonky with your finger. Make sure you go down centered. When you start to drag, don't. Okay, so see already, we got 10 centimeters. We're at probably 14. So now we can come back in here, and however you want to do with your knob, we'll have a little fun with it. I'm going to bring it in somewhat more narrow. And you got to be sure you got to be careful not to twist these off. A lot of these, if I want to get a really narrow stem on my knob and tall at the same time, I'll usually end up trimming it some and not going too crazy. I'm trying to get it thrown really thin, but I'll try to get a little bit out of it. Get us a really wide curve. What I like is making this curve really wide so that it fits the curve of the piece. It feels right with the curve of the piece nicely. So I smash that down, bring that back up. Now these are notorious for having little S cracks on the insides of them, so when we trim these, there's kind of a trick too that I trim into the stem just a little bit and then try to compress that a hair. Now it's a matter of how deep do you want this thing to set? How much do you want your knob to stick up? I've done them in such, like when I got more than 10 centimeters, I'll have a narrower. You can actually make this curve go right over with the piece, which is kind of fun. So we're getting close to 10 centimeters. But I don't want to be that tall. So we're going to actually cut some more off right now. There we go. I've got about that much off again. Okay, so now we're at 10 centimeters and we're very thick still. So this would have been a decent one to do off the hump. So what I want to do now is I want to create a flat plane up here. And I'm changing the angle of this. I'm going to move the camera. Okay, I moved you because I want you to be able to actually see from a profile what I'm doing. Get you in a little closer. Okay, so if you remember, here, hold on. This piece here, whoops, let me get the camera right. This piece here is what I'm making the lid for, right here. This is my flush inset. And oops, okay. So this right here is what I'm thinking about, is this edge. And I just stuck the handle of my bucket in my other pot. Perfect. Okay, so, whoa, we're really close now. So this right here is what I'll do is when I set this in the 10 centimeter hole, I want these two to be flush when I get done. Now we're way bigger than, or sorry, way smaller than 10 centimeters, and that's a good thing because we got a lot of clay here. So I'm gonna pull this up a hair and push down on that, and that'll allow that to thicken that a little bit, and that'll make it even more dramatic. What's really nice is when they're both exactly the same. That's kind of a lot of fun. I'll see if I can't get as close to that. Getting close to 10 centimeters. So I decided I didn't want to be quite so crowded with my lid or my knob. So I'm going to push that down some, and that'll fatten up some clay. we want this to be thicker than how our gallery sets. If we make, so Miguel, when you're making this, however tall that gallery is, you want the thickness of this wall right here to be more, the same or more, but more is better because we can cut it away.
Gotcha.
Oh, dang. I think I'm there. We're a tiny bit too big. I'm going to fatten that up again. Now we're going to be a tiny bit too small. And no! 10 centimeters. We're there. Okay. So that's got that piece. And I'm going to undercut that a bit. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to wire it off. I'm not going to pick it up. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to move it off with the bat. These are not bad to pick up, but I've got the bats, so I'm not going to mess with it. So this is just a half a pound, and really, it's a chore for me to center half a pound of clay, just to get your hands around it in such a way that you can. It's a tiny piece of clay, and this is going to look very, very. I gotta stay on focus here as to what I'm doing, because I'm gonna do two of these differently so that I can show you something also on the trim. So once again, let's get our calipers here. There's 10 centimeters, so we gotta go that wide, which isn't gonna take much clay. But it's going to take most of this half a pound that I've got here. Let's see how we're doing. And we're already past. Which is a good place to be, because I want to create a little... This does two things. It creates some interest so that I don't have this just flat disc, and it creates some strength, okay, so that I'm not just got this kind of wispy little thing sitting out there. Now, what I'm going to do here also, since this is just a half a pound and it's not that much, I'm going to let this thing pop off the bat. I'm not going to cut it all. These are plastic bats, and when I make the bottoms to my goblets, I actually I never cut them, and then I know they're perfectly flat and they just pop away later on. Okay, so there's 10 centimeters, and now we're going to make our knob. And let's have a little fun with it. Now this sets down a little ways, right? It sets down almost a full inch. And so you need a knob that kind of sticks up, and I'm gonna get rid of that. I had a little fancy thing in there. Now I'm gonna leave this a little bit on the thick side because it's so long. I don't want it to twist. And I can trim it up. Actually, I'm kind of getting there. Ooh, see, that was what? I'm always preaching against, you know, so many poles. But that was nice and easy. And of course, I didn't put any water on it each time I did it. It's just subtle enough what I was doing there to not be an issue. All right, that piece is pretty much finished. What I'm going to do here now is undercut it just a hair, not a bunch, okay? Because this is actually, we're finished grade right here. So I can't go too crazy and jump way under there, but this will help it start cracking away too from the bat. And what I don't want to do is like go boom like that, because this is wobbly enough, it's narrow enough that it would throw it out of center. All right, so that's got that. Now this one, I'm just going to make a disc. And so I can actually cut clay away here. Perfect. It's like I'm making taffy. All right, so that allows me to, I cut a little bit more than I needed because I have more clay than I need still. And I can compress that down and make that nice and curvy. Okay. A little bit of slop. Got to get it right there. I got a goober here on my calipers. All right, right at 10 centimeters. And now we're going to just touch that little bit right there. And that's it. Pretty crazy, huh? We're making ceramic coasters. You never thought you signed up for this. Okay, so this is the, I trimmed the bodies to the pots that I threw because you've seen me do that in quite a few different places. And the object of the exercise here is lids and how they fit on those bodies. And so that's why they're there. And so they just needed to be ready to receive these. So this is my favorite trimming tool right here. So here, sorry. let's back up and actually act like I'm teaching something. All right, so here's the piece that how it was thrown yesterday. And of course, is made, the gallery is made with that right there to create that 90-degree angle there. And so I just flip it over. And I like doing, if you can see right here, there's just a little bit of a disparity between where that would go right across and then that comes down just a little bit lower. And so it just allows me a little room to play in here. I usually like to make a nice curve here and then a line and then going across. Occasionally I'll do lids that go all the way across and they don't have any disruption to the surface. It really depends a lot on the glaze. If I've got a really watery, glassy glaze, it looks very nice on that undisturbed surface. If I've got a glaze that's matte and it breaks nicely, I want to have that. I want the edge, and most of my glazes are the latter. So let's see here. So what I like most about this trimming tool is that it presents a cutting edge at a 45-degree angle. And so my wrist and my hand stay relatively straight when I go to use it. So see right there, it just, at least for how I hold a tool, this thing works perfectly. And it is a Dolan. Most of the trimming tools I use are Dolans. And I don't ever remember what this number is. Everybody always asks me. Looks like it's $4.50. Or it's a $4.50. Or it's a $4.30. Susan Dolan, she knows my favorite tool. And if you message her at Dolan Tools, she'll tell you. This is it. So here I've got a curve tool that works nicely. It's this right here. This is also a Dolan. This is a flea market spoon, and it does this curve absolutely perfectly. Of course, this is the spoon that I use, or one of the spoons that I use to smooth my bottoms with. I actually ground the edge and put a little bit of a cutting edge on it. It doesn't really help a lot. One of the things that makes tools work good is that when the clay gets cut and it comes up into here, it sticks. Okay, and so that's why just having a bar here where it releases to space works better than having this really super smooth curved surface where the clay just comes up and grabs. So it's not ideal in that regard for trimming, but it does work really well. It's a perfect shape, and so I kind of tolerate it. And like it's whatever tool is closest, you know. And usually the spoon is sitting on my wheel. Once again, it smooths nicely into that, right up into that curve. So here's what we have for a finished piece right there. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to throw a knob on this. So just get some scritchies in there, not very many, just a few. And then it's always less than you think. And I don't have any water. I thought I had done a really good job of grabbing everything I needed, and I did not. I was thinking of trimming, not throwing. So when I do this, I'll make kind of a ball, okay? And then I'll make a point like this, okay? So I got a point going like that. And that way when I push it down, it smashes into all those lines really well, okay? So I just tap a little water, and then I'm gonna push and wiggle, and I turn it a little bit so I can kind of make sure I am kind of keeping it somewhat centered. As Doesn't feel like it's sticking good yet. If it doesn't feel like anything, anytime the clay's not feeling like it's sticking, you wiggle it until you feel like it wants to hold and stop. Oops, it helped to center the piece. There we go. So now I actually try to cone this a little bit. It helps the centering process. And so even though we're talking about a tiny piece of clay here, and it helps to kind of just come into it nice and gently so that you don't just rip it loose. Usually by this stage, they never come off. It's usually right when you come into them that they'll come away. And so it's just kind of a back and forth. And I should have coned it again. It's a little bit wobbly. One of the things I like to tell people is that when the pot spends almost none of its life turning. Most of its life is spent sitting very still. And so I really like this method. You can throw this super thick and trim it, okay? But it takes forever to keep it dry, to get it dry, and it takes forever, not just to get it to dry, but you know, your rim out here is almost bone dry or bone dry, while this in here is just starting to get ready to trim. And so there's a lot of you got to kind of pay attention to them a little more than I want to. And so I like throwing the piece on. Now, the biggest question, the most frequent question I get is, does it ever crack away? Or do I try to slow these down in drying? And I do not. I just let them go. Now, one of the things I do is it kind of mimics this line right here. I'll come in here and I'll just make that line right there. And that keeps any crackers from happening. Because it doesn't have that, when the clay kind of skids into itself, that transition from the really dry to where it starts to get thicker is where it normally gets a crack. And if I do this, I never have anything. So here's what we got for a knob. And on this piece, like if I had to, like think about how much clay that would have been if I would have had to trim that out. It's just a lot. So I don't mess with it. So there's that lid. And all right, we're gonna now do the honey pot. So I'll start by getting, just going to tap it on center. Come on. This is going much faster than the throwing last night, isn't it? This, it's nice to have good sharp tools, but it's like as soon as you sharpen them, I mean, I don't have a cheap bench grinder. I've got a pretty good bench grinder. It's one of the slow speeds that I use for, not a super slow speed, but I guess it's a medium. It's not just one of those cheap high-speed bench grinders from the hardware store. It's made for doing the knives for a wood lathe. But it still puts a little bit of a rough edge on the piece when you sharpen it. So I always cut this in right here. This helps define the space between my glazing and my unglazed foot, as well as it helps slow glaze down, gives it a little place to rest just before it goes onto the shelf, and welds it to the shelf. And hopefully I shut the kiln off before that happens. So that little groove is, I like having that in there. we come to that acute edge, right there, at that spot right there. So my wax brush will go to there, and then I'll have that nice clean line, and put my chop on there. And now we will, whoops, let's not bung up the bottom. Now I didn't leave myself a lot here. Remember when I was saying when you cut these things off, cut them long? And I should have been listening to myself more closely, because this is a pretty deep curve. And I could have given myself a tiny bit more room. I think I'm going to be okay. But I'm not gonna get after it. I'm not gonna take a lot of clay off that spot. So this trims up pretty much like the top to my other, but however, slow down. I get to going because I get in a rhythm, and I forget to, well, I remember a lot of things, but sometimes it's after the fact. So here's my lid sitting in there, all right? And remember, when I threw this upside down, I made sure that this was good and fat around this edge right here, okay? That's really important in this, for what I'm about to do, okay? So we've got a pretty deep recess, and what I want, okay? What I want to see is this is pretty much real close to the same thickness as my rim. Whew, man, struggling with what to call this. So what I'll do now is I come in here, and I'm going to do that right there. So what I'm essentially doing is cutting the same looking curve on the honey pot. So I got these two nice lines that glaze breaks nicely over these, and they mirror one another in such a way that I really like it. It's something that I think is a good attention to detail that works really nicely. Yeah, this is not going to be a knob that sticks way up. This is, I got just enough to make this knob. Got a piece of debris in here somewhere. Okay, and then here's where the Dolan tool pays for itself. The boy can get in there. And that kind of helps me define just where this curve needs to go to. Once I can get my knob set. Come on, get off of there. I'm going to do a little burnishing here, smooth things out nicely. Okay, so we got that going now. Now it's not a honey pot if you can't put a stick in it. There's my knife. Okay. And I don't really struggle a lot with this. I just start cutting. Normally I get to these a little bit sooner, and they're not quite this hard. So I don't want to jack it up, so I'm just taking little bits. Normally it's one cut and I'm done. And then maybe come back after the one cut and just like doctor it up and make it just right. But as hard as it was, I didn't want to crack anything or break something. And let's see here. We'll go ahead and... One of the things that surprises me about single fire glazing, because these are going to be glazed. Actually, no, this is cone 6 clay. But even I make most of my honey pots cone 10, and that thin spot never cracks. I don't understand it. It's just, that's super thin. That's barely. That's just a shot. That's 1/8 of an inch, and it doesn't. I don't even remember one doing it. So. But then there's other instances where, you know, I'll get issues from it being too thin sometimes. So go figure. And of course I set it down on a bunch of trim scraps. Great way to clean the wheel off, right? Okay, so come on, get out of there. There, we have, technically speaking, even have a honey pot. And yeah, I just like the way that lid, it helps the lid just sit nicely there with that rounded rim right there, right next to the rim of the piece. Okay, so I've got this lid. So Miguel, this is my inset lid, and I went to put it in, and it's just a fuzz too big, which is all right.
Yeah.
And so, especially because it holds up. So I get it perfectly centered, and then get my cap on so I can hold it good. And then I just skim it until, you know, I'm thinking I got it. And then you just go back and you test. I'll roll that bottom just a hair. So I think what I had more than anything is my bevel wasn't quite as good as it could have been right over here.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Okay, so
The piece itself.
then you set it down there, and oh, yeah, now we're talking. So now you take and you see, now here's the problem. This can present a problem. It's not terrible, but this piece is dried unevenly, and so it's a little bit off, but it's resting in the gallery perfectly, and that's what we want to make sure it's resting in the gallery perfectly. And then we try to get it, you got to kind of ignore the wobble because it's going up and down from drying unevenly, and make sure that you're really nice and centered. You go ahead and put your cap on so that it holds it nicely, and then you trim it off.
Trim it flush.
Uh-huh.
Nice. Good trick.
And so it's really important when you're setting this gallery that you do it really evenly. I didn't mention that last night. But when you go to put this on, if your gallery isn't even, this, now that it's perfect, and then you turn it around 180 degrees, if your gallery isn't perfect, one side's up and one side's, one side's down too. So you got to make sure that gallery is set just right. And so you got to really, you've got a sharp, very acute edge right here now. And so you just come in here and you can almost put your finger, you just put your finger in some water and knock it down. Okay. But you just do whatever you think is a little bit, do half of that, of what you think is a little. And you come back here and you do the same right here. You just barely knock that edge down. And then I'll do the same on the inside where I've got an acute edge now. And then when that sets there, that looks good, doesn't it?
Pretty satisfying.
Yeah, very satisfying. And what I really like is when this dimension and this dimension are the same.
Oh, I see what you
I
mean.
think I got real close. So
Nice.
now what I got to do here is, what I love about it is this nice curvedness, and then you got to have a really, you don't have to. It's kind of nice to go opposite and have it like nice and pointed, but this actually needs a little work. And one of the things I didn't mention here, and I'm going to show everybody here also on the camera, I didn't trim this yet because I wanted as wide a bottom as I possibly could on my surface here. And actually, if I wasn't on the foam, it probably would have even been better. It might not have stuck as well, but you could throw a little water on it, it'd stick good. But I wanted a really good, wide, substantial bottom for working on this. And now I'm just gonna come across this top. Got a little piece of clay. There's a little bit of imperfection right here. And when you dial it in everywhere else, if you leave one place that's a little off, boy, it really sticks out. Oh yeah, very nice. Okay, so one of the reasons why I've got that trim the way I did is that now, and it doesn't always work real great because I've got my, I can put this in a chuck, but I've got a little bit too much angle here to my gallery, and so it's not wanting to sit in here perfectly, but this can usually work as a pretty good chuck for trimming the lid. As you can see, I'm trimming down into, and of course now we get into the, can you get it back out? So obviously I got a bunch of clay in here, and so I'm going to trim down in here to try to get a little bit of that clay out, and so that I don't have such a heavy lid. This is still pretty heavy. I'm going to take some more weight off of this, but it definitely, that's one of the things I got going on there. Oops, not nearly as setting in there as well as I was when before I took it out. Okay. All right. Now that's got that in there nicely. And now I can turn this over and trim the piece. Like the way that looks. Nice pot. All right, so I'm here at, this is the redo portion of the two lids that are much different than the one I originally threw. It's going to fit in the chuck. Okay, so here it is, thrown on the plastic bat, and this is actually, it's actually already broken loose on its own, okay? Now, this is forbidden, okay, in the world of ceramics to not cut your pots off. But it works, so I do it. There's reasoning behind it, you know, in that, you know, it's good to get your pots turned over. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you should treat pottery. A lot of the ways, and this is going to sound funny, I had a person calling me asking for help about platters that were cracking, and it's like, if you just get, it's like if you get pissed off and you're like, fine, you're going to crack every time, but I'm going to make 100. And by the time you get to 10, maybe 15, they'll stop cracking. It's like, I don't understand it. The way you touch clay changes the more you touch clay. And at some point you start to get away with things that are like, you're not supposed to do that. And so, but I've been doing this for years. And the thing is, what's really nice about it, like if you want a super flat, slick bottom, there it is. And so I only do it with the plastic bats because, and maybe that's part of this whole thing, is that super flat, perfect, you know, manufactured, not in nature surface might help this. I don't know, but like on my goblets, definitely my goblet stems, now they don't have a bottom, they're thrown with no bottom. But on my The trivets. Anytime I throw small trivets, like a little shallow saucer that's barely got any clay in it at all, like the bottoms, the coaster to the berry bowls that I make. I always throw these on. I throw them on my plastic bats. Just let them go. Come in a day, whatever it is later, they're popped loose, and I'll actually dry trim them. They might have a little bit of color still left in them, but because this is B-Mix and it's super smooth, or like if you had a porcelain clay body or something like that, you can dry trim. It's not a big deal. So just an FYI there. So this is popped loose. I got my chuck sitting here. I'm going to center it, and I'm just going to trim a little bit out of this bottom. So if you got this shape, clear up into that shaft, it's solid clay, right? And so that's a lot right there. And I'm just going to take some of it out just because I feel like I should. So we're going to tap this on center here. And see, that's where I need a chuck with a wider opening, or not just opening, but going down into it. So I'm just going to follow, the contour of how that clay moves up into that shaft just a little bit, and then it'll be done. I don't know if this is necessary, just it's something I feel like I ought to do. So I'm doing it. Gone very silent, hasn't it? I'm still here. Okay. I sometimes feel like I need to fill the space. I don't know why. I just do. So when I'm doing this, I'm actually, how you can present a really good edge for cutting? This is not a new tool. It's not an old tool, but it doesn't have the super sharp edge that it comes with. And I actually like that better for this, because I'm actually getting a shine as I am trimming away. So it's doing a little bit of compression and cutting. If I had a really super sharp surface, it wouldn't be doing that. All right, that's good there. We're just gonna make that edge rounded off right nicely. Make sure everything's nice and tidy here. And I think I'm actually gonna make a line to wax too, as I'm thinking about that. Just good manners, right? Let's see, how far in does that? That's gonna come in about that far. So we're just going to do that. We're just going to carry that right down into it. Now I'm going easy here because there's nothing holding this. It's just the friction of sitting here on this chuck. So I'm not getting after it and going crazy here trimming. Not quite holding my breath, but I considered it. Oh, nice. Much nicer way to finish that, isn't it? Okay. So we got that going. And there is our lid. So everything is looking really good on that one. Okay, so we got this next one. And it hasn't popped loose yet, I don't think. So I'm gonna give it a little twist, and nope, not quite. So you can take these bats a little bit, flex them a hair, and there we go. So I like what I just did so much. Now I don't obviously need to worry about this part, but I am gonna neaten this up just a hair. Well, there went my clay somewhere. There it is. That's my clay for the knob we're going to throw on this. Get the little scrum out of there that rolled through all the dry bits. Okay. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, just knock that corner off. I've gone silent again, haven't I? Just going to burnish this with my finger just a little bit. That tool's not quite as blunt. I actually sharpened that one recently. Okay. It's looking pretty good. All right. Now, we're going to throw a knob on this. Now there's a, that's what I'm going to do. Put down a little water, and we'll see if this just sticks. Okay, and once again, I don't have, oh, I got everything so far. Look at that. My scritchy tool. Okay. Now this is just some clay that I've tore off a piece, and what I do normally is I'll dip it in water, and then I work this water in, and I do that by I just squeeze it into a coil, and then I fold it. Now I'm not folding it trying to make air bubbles here, right? Okay, so you got to kind of pay attention to what you're doing here, and I'll squeeze it and fold it back on itself. And every time you fold it, it's like cutting it at the wire when you're preparing clay, okay? Because you're making, there's 2 layers, and then you fold it again, and there's 4 layers, and then 8 layers. 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. What comes next? 512 and 1024. So if I fold this 10 times, I got 1024 layers. Then the numbers really take off. So I want this on the soft side. I'm actually going to dip it a little bit. I'm going to dip it again and go again. So I was down to the point where it was tacky, and I could have actually used it to throw with. But I want it on the softer side. So usually 2 dips in water gets it to where I like it. Okay, so that's some pretty soft clay. All right, and I'm going to take and just kind of knead it into kind of a point, okay? And I'm going to get this a little bit more elongated so that I'm a whole lot closer to where I'm going to try to take this. I'm actually going to cone this and center it, okay? But I want that kind of point there, a blunt end. Shouldn't say point. How about a blunted point? All right, so it's kind of shaped like that. Tap some water into my scritchies. Let's get you down here real close. Okay, and now I'm going to go right in the center of that, and I'm going to give it some wiggles and pushes. Okay, and this, you got to be kind of patient here. Okay, and by kind of patient, that's the kind of patience I have. It's just kinda. Okay, so, but if you're not patient, you're going to have to do this again. So it actually is faster to go slow. In my old studio, before I moved here, I had it written on the wall. It said, "Slow down, you'll get more done." That was from my 20s and 30s. Started to slow down in my 40s, and actually it wasn't as painful. So you can feel when it kind of has started to bite and not want to slide. So I'm going to get this, make sure my fingers are wet and this is wet. And so first thing I want to do is heal that seam. That helps me stick better. But still, you don't want to grab this and, start to, center clay like crazy. But I'm going to cone this a little bit. Not doing insane amounts, just getting it going. See, there's a pretty good, what would have been a pretty good twist in my clay had I not done this. And it's wanting to slip just a little bit. This is a big piece of clay. This will be a pretty good sized knob. So you just got to kind of just go easy. Keep your fingers very wet. You don't want, this is not one of those times where you want to throw dry, okay? Now this is a small enough amount of clay. I understand I was calling it a large amount of clay, but I've thrown a lot bigger knobs than this, okay? So it's a small enough amount of clay. I could still throw this solid if I wanted to and make a knob out of it solid, but we're gonna do this one hollow. Okay, so we got it pretty centered. I'm not feeling that fault line in there. So I'm going to go ahead and open this, and I'm going to go right down to at least very, very close. It's almost like you can feel it where it's started to dry. It's not quite as wet right next to that surface, and when you get a little resistance, I just stop. I am not quite to it, but I'm real close. And then I just make a pull by taking my thumb. Can't see my thumb, can you? I'm taking my thumb right here, and I'm just bringing it up with my finger. And this is mostly made one-handed. Okay, so it's very, very soft clay, so you want to make sure not to torque it. So keep it really wet. Because it's not like this takes a long time. So keeping your clay wet isn't that big of a deal. I've already got a little on the inside. I'm going to actually work the water that's on the inside up my side. Just putting my finger down there and pulling it up the side because I don't want water sitting in the bottom of this. Now I'm going to give it a little bitty squeeze down here at the bottom, kind of start getting my shape in. And you know what? I sat down here, and this is something that I really preach against a lot, and that is not knowing where you're going but before you get started. And I clearly did not. So forgive me for a moment, because I kind of got lost for just a second. So I'm getting this super thin up here at the top because I'm gonna collar it in and close it off. So there's no water down in my bottom. And here, when I'm closing stuff off, I'm just getting around it as much as I can. I got 5 points. I can't get 6. I don't have room. And I don't want to run out of clay. I don't think I was going to, but I don't want to. And I could have, maybe. Okay, we are closed off, and I'm going to spend some time here just waiting for that to disappear. If you push too hard, it makes a little dent right over here next to it. So you go slow. Remember patience? I want patience now. Okay. I'm going to refine this bottom just a little bit, and I might have to poke a hole in the top in order to get the shape to change, but I wanted to get it closed so that I knew that I could without torquing my bottom. Yeah, I'm going to have to, it's wanting to fight me just a hair. So I'm going to poke a hole. Now when you poke a hole, you can't just go in and out, because what happens is the clay on the other side, it just comes right back and it fills the hole. So you got to kind of waller it out just a little bit. So now I'm going to close it off again. Let's see if I can't get to kind of a flatter top here. This is still going to be a gigantic knob for the size of piece that I've made, but we're doing lids and knobs go along with that, and so I guess I just wanted to show how I would make something such as this. And that's got us pretty good right there. So I'm kind of compressing right down at that bottom. And what I'll normally do here, so I'll get questions about these, about do they ever crack? And I really don't have them crack. When I first started out, they did, which is kind of how it is with everything. But when they do crack, they crack right about there, okay? So what I do is I come in here and I just do that. And then they don't at all, at least in years, they haven't. And to me, it actually looks, I like the way it looks as well. It looks like there's a kind of a separation between the lid and the knob. And so if you didn't want that line, okay, what you would do is you would throw this piece, get finished with it, and then you would come back and you would want to recompress later, or just spend a lot of time, give it some attention, you know, at getting it really well compressed in that spot. Okay, so that's that piece right there. Now, it's, remember I got it loose, trimmed the bottom, turned it back over. So this is a finished piece, and then you threw some water on it, and it just stuck itself. And I like being able to work that way. So the thing is here, don't mess with it. So it's on the bat. I'm going to move it, and then we're going to transition into